Hey, good evening, everybody. It's a Friday night. I got Jayda Russell with me here.
Hey Brad, how's it going?
It's been a long month, hasn't it?
Yes.
And that's just this week.
Yeah.
Look at this behind us. This is incredible. This is a winter storm. We've got winter storm warnings from New Mexico through the Kansas plains, all of Texas, and Houston. In fact, I had to cancel my big AM.
Right.
There's a big weather conference going on in Houston beginning this weekend. And in fact, earlier when it looked like, that warm nose may kill a lot of this, I was like, okay, I'll still be able to go.
Fine.
But I had to reroute to go to Miami and then go over to Houston because there's no way I wanted to go American Airlines into Houston. And that's, if you're planning on traveling, it's going to be a nightmare.
Absolutely.
We got the latest coming up for you, but here's what's happened. Jayda, you were looking at the model guidance when I was on my dinner break.
Yes.
And you looked a little concerned. What'd you see?
So what I noticed was that it looks like some of the precipitation snow-wise seems to have dropped down just a tad, where we thought that this was going to be more of our Tennessee folks and then the northwestmost corner of the state for Alabama. It's now kind of dropped down to some of our counties on the Tennessee line. So we're looking at Madison County, parts of DeKalb as well. So it's
Yeah.
a lot of our communities that are starting to get a little extra snow going into tomorrow morning. And that's kind of our larger concern.
Yeah, the cold air is just arriving. If you haven't been outside, the cold air is coming. It's down to freezing. So we've got the cold air racing down. We'll get to radar in a second. We've already got snow developing, moving into Mississippi. But the interesting thing, as we kind of zoom in here with this area, you've got ice storm warnings all along the southern fringes, but there's this break. I think this is going to change. In fact, I just asked the Weather Service. I said, are you planning on upgrading any areas based on the model guidance? Or are you going to do what we call nowcast? And that's when they're going to evaluate as everything's coming together and then possibly upgrade. But again, they're concerned, and we're concerned about parts of DeKalb County and Jackson County. And you'll see why coming up. We could see a half-inch accumulation of ice. In fact, two of our in-house models, one of them has this freezing rain ice mix in DeKalb County in around Fort Payne and Rainsville and Fife, has it going on from roughly the noon hour tomorrow all the way through 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right, and that was another update that we saw that I was a little concerned on because we mentioned it earlier, it hanging around a little longer than anticipated, and now it's kind of pushed further along.
Yeah, and the winds are going to be strong. We're going to get to that. They may see 35-mile-an-hour wind gusts up here on Lookout Mountain and parts of Sand Mountain. Meanwhile, we've always been concerned about areas in the northwest corner of the state, but I really think this icing is kind of creeping up here into Limestone County and Lawrence County. So I could see the ice storm warning kind of shifting. Again, we want to talk about trends because that's, we forecast for a living.
Right.
And everybody wants to know, well, what's going to happen next? So tonight, the model guidance we're looking at has trended a little bit south, and we'll talk about the snow in a second. And as we take a look up to Fayetteville, I wouldn't be surprised to see ice storm warning in these areas. There's a winter storm warning for Giles County, but that could easily be an ice storm warning too.
Right.
And I wouldn't be surprised, I would not be surprised if this trends more south, that all of us are upgraded with the exception of, say, Coleman County and maybe Marshall County to winter storm warnings. So let's get into this temperature drop here. It's 34, but it feels colder, but it'll be freezing probably by 10 o'clock in Huntsville. And look what's up the road. These are actual temperatures. It is 8 below zero in Chicago. It's 21 in Nashville, 12. So this is what's going to provide, what's happening is you've got this cold air that's coming down on the ground. Think of this as like maple syrup.
Right.
And it's dense. It crawls to the south. And then in the upper levels of the atmosphere, about 1,000 to 2,000 feet above the ground, late tomorrow afternoon, the warmer air is coming back to the north. And it's going to go over the top of this. And that's why it's more of a freezing rain and sleet event than it is a snow event. But eventually it's all going to change over to rain. So let's go ahead and take this full screen here. You can get a better visual of this. As you can see, Des Moines is 5 below zero. And again, the wind chill factor has been about 50 below zero. I got a good friend, Sean Cable, up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and he shared an image. I put that on my Facebook page too. 50. I don't know how those people deal with that.
At all. I've seen the same thing, and really the commentary here has been the fact that it is that battle of two fronts once it gets to our area, but those negative
And that's why, and this is so serious. So here's our snow. It's starting to move just into Memphis. Now, the leading edge of this, it's going to encounter this. We talk about how cold the air is coming in, but it's also very dry. So there's just going to be this period. And I've had winter storms in the past, man. We had this one we thought was going to be a doozy one year. This was 20 years ago. But the dew points in Georgia dropped below zero.
Oh, goodness.
So it was snowing at like 3,000 feet above North Alabama, but it was all evaporating before it hit the ground.
Wow.
So that was a bust I'll never forget. So I always look at the dew points when that happens. Our dew points are going to be in the single digits and teens as this moves in. So initially you may be looking at our weather app and you may be saying, oh, hey, it should be snowing where I am, but it's evaporating. It's in Virga, basically. So again, this will start moving in, a real mess. This is the latest snowfall potential. Starts around 6 o'clock in the morning. And look at that. We're looking at that 1 to 2 right along the state line up to Highway 64. And this is kind of sneaking down into Madison. This would be a dusting.
Right.
But what this does is this falls on these roads. The road temperatures are going to be in the mid-20s. So once that sleet comes in later, that eventually makes the sleet stick. Mm-hmm. It sticks instantaneously on the roads. So we can go ahead and come back to us here. We'll kind of talk more about this. But and if the trend continues, this will slide about 10 miles more to the south. So, again, this is why we say be prepared. And this is why no one should ever take, it's just a winter weather advisory lightly, because I think it was 2014, Atlanta metro area. They were like, here was, it wasn't necessarily the citizens, but it was the governments,
right.
the municipalities were not prepared. They're like, it's just a winter weather advisory. But we know from 2 years ago, our municipalities are ready. They've been out there. They are taking this seriously. So hopefully the pre-treating will help. Absolutely. But once you start to get that freezing rain on there, what's your most memorable snowstorm? You're a local here.
Yeah, 2014, I actually was moving from Nashville to here to Huntsville. And it was kind of crazy because Nashville was also in that same predicament that we were seeing. Pretty similar setup to where they are now, where their wind chill was, I think we were in the negatives at some point. It was
Let's go ahead and take this full and we'll kind of talk over this. Yeah. There's a lot to take in on this graphic here. I've got another one that's covering the eastern part, and then you can continue your story. This is when we think, they look at the top, 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. This is where, and if we can't list every town, so you're just going to have to figure out how close you are to these towns.
For sure. But with that Nashville, that was around that same time. I think their biggest concern was making sure the roadways were clear. But there was a lot of my friends at the point in time that they were kind of stuck at home. Roads were tough to clear. So it took them about a day or two to kind of get everything back on track. And that's why we're trying to be ahead of the game with this, because it can take days at a time if we have a refreeze. There's a lot of different things that come into play here.
And it doesn't take much. It takes an inch around here.
Right.
Especially with temperatures below freezing. So again, the road temperatures are going to start below freezing, and they may stay that way for a while. You notice Florence here. We've got snow there. We've added snow to Athens, Fayetteville, Madison, and Huntsville. Just this very minor snow, mind you. We're talking maybe an inch in Florence, Athens, maybe a dusting, and Fayetteville maybe an inch, as you saw in the other graphic. But the mix lasts a lot longer, all the way through 8 o'clock in Florence. And what the mix is, it could be sleet, it could be freezing rain. We hope this is more sleet, because if we get over a half inch of freezing rain on the trees, they are going to start breaking, and you're going to hear trees snapping. And you're probably going to be in your house, and you're going to be like, what in the world is that noise?
Yeah.
And if that starts happening, you need to stay in your house.
Absolutely.
Because that is a very dangerous thing. You get a lot of weight on these trees, they're going to snap. And the pine trees, the evergreen trees, they're all more susceptible. They're
right.
I mean, they've still got their leaves. They never die out. So like an oak tree is probably going to be a little bit better. But just letting your dog out in the backyard, if you got to go out on the patio, iced over, you'd be surprised the injuries people have.
Right.
And then the post injuries. Say you've got tree damage, you're out there with a chainsaw cutting things down.
Yeah.
You can get power lines down.
Yeah.
So our big concern is the northwest corner of the state, and then again DeKalb County. And right now it's starting to kind of lean towards just north of Athens, north of Huntsville towards Hazel Green, north of Harvest,
Right.
up into southern middle Tennessee. And you notice this all trends as rain down the road. But, you don't want to say, oh, it's all going to turn to rain. The problem is, if you got a half inch of ice on your power line for 4 or 5 hours, the wind gust hits 25 miles an hour, the power line is not coming back.
Yeah.
So even if it's raining, it doesn't help. The only thing it helps there is if you go without heat, your temperatures are going to be in the 30s, in fact, warming up into the 40s.
Right.
But then if the power doesn't come on, you're in trouble come Sunday night and Monday when temperatures drop down to 14 degrees. The wind chill will be below zero. Here's the next step here, and you'll notice a change here. Let's take this full here as well. And at Guntersville, I know you kind of feel left out here. I think it's mostly rain as you get into eastern parts of Morgan County, and you'll see why as we come up here in just a few minutes. Going to show you the hour-by-hour data. This is all that warm nose, we call it, coming in from the south. So I've added Hartselle, Coleman, and Arab to a mix from 9 a.m. to 11, and then Scottsboro, kind of more of a mix there. But you're also going to see this warm nose. Same thing in Boaz. But Rainsville and Fort Payne, you may be locked in even into the overnight hours. So while things may improve out in the shoals and in the northwest corner of the state with rain at night, we may not see that. And in fact, the Barron model, it's got a projected road temperatures, and they're in the upper 20s in parts of DeKalb County.
Yeah. I think that's kind of another large concern of ours is these road temperatures for sure. Because like we've mentioned, it does not take much of these icy conditions to kind of change things around in the forecast.
Yeah, you see here on this ice potential map here, and we talk anything above a half inch is really bad. Even, in fact, above a quarter of an inch.
Right.
If you get a wind gust of 30 miles an hour, that's bad. So right away, I'm very concerned with the area in maroon there, from Iuka through Waterloo, in around Cherokee and Barton, even Florence. We could see widespread power outages, and these could last through the weekend and early next week. And that concern is when the temperatures really drop. You're going to need warming centers, things like that. So these are the reasons that Governor Kay Ivey issued the state of emergency for the state. And it's not necessarily due to some weather conditions in all areas. It's so that we can get resources where they need to be, because there's, a lot of red tape in the government. And you see that stripes up there from Pulaski to Lawrenceburg and Decatur, starting to see a little bit more. Madison, Athens, Harvest around probably the same as Athens into East Limestone. And then there's that secondary area. Again, Fort Payne's like, don't forget about us.
Yeah.
And you bet we're not going to on this situation. So here's a look at those potential wind gusts. This is at 5 p.m. When we probably have the worst of the icing in the northwest corner of the state. And then look at DeKalb County there, right along I-59, 22 mile an hour, increasing to 30 miles an hour. And meanwhile, late at night, as the rain's picking up out in the shoals, we see those wind gusts approaching 20 to 25 miles per hour.
Yeah.
And here's the peak. As we go into Sunday morning, this starts changing into heavy rain, a few thunderstorms, and gusty winds. We're not going to see any severe weather. It's going to be too cold for that. So here's the latest setup as we go hour by hour through this. How much time do we got, by the way?
We got about 5 minutes left.
5 minutes.
9:47.
9:47. All
Sweet.
right. So again, we're leading up to our 10 o'clock news. There's that area of snow that's dropped a little farther south. So 7 o'clock in the morning, you could very well be seeing some light snow. And it could actually pick up. What happens with this, where the pink, almost purplish, the periwinkle color?
Yeah.
I used to work at Benny and Smith, the Crayola Crayon Factory.
Oh, nice.
When I was in college, that was my summer job. So periwinkles, I kind of go to, that's my go.
My favorite color.
So anyway, it's right along that axis where you make that changeover that it could be heavy. So we could see a little burst of moderate to heavier snow as that comes in. It'll be temporary, but that's what's pushing north. That warm nose initially is warming the upper levels of the atmosphere, and that's why it's not snow, and it's sleet and then freezing rain. So I do expect along Highway 72, there is a possibility we're going to get 1 to 2 inches of sleet or snow accumulate. And then that's the roads are going to be bad there. And then it changes over to freezing rain and it's an ice rink. So
Yeah.
that's the concern here. Notice the temperatures here: 26 in Florence, 27 in Russellville, 28 down to Phil Campbell. So by this time, I think we're going to have widespread travel impact, northern Madison County through parts of Limestone, even western Morgan County, and it's going to be one of those stay off the roads. Roads are impassable kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you notice it's also sneaking south down towards Scottsboro and Arab. And even Marshall County, I've got you in there. I said mostly rain, but Grant, you may see an hour of some sleet.
Right.
But note, here comes the warmer air. It's coming in, and this would explain the graphic I just showed you, why we don't have really much of anything for Coleman or Albertville and Gunnersville, and then Arab, it changes over. It also warms up. But look at the area here I've circled. This is 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. This is when that wedge may start to push, and the wedge is really, really hard to pick up, even as a meteorologist forecast, but the model guidance is terrible with it. So here at 6 o'clock, we're starting to transition to rain in the northwest corner of the state. However, we may have power outages already, and the rain's not going to help. And then we start to lock in this pattern that I've got circled for several hours, all the way through 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning here, from Scottsboro down to Fort Payne. We will have to watch very, very closely. And then as we go through the morning hour Sunday, this is all just I hate to even say cold rain because it's 46 degrees here in Decatur. But look at Fort Payne. Still 32.
Yeah.
So, again, really got to watch that area. This all ends as rain in most cases. As we get into 3 o'clock in the afternoon, may get a snow flurry or two behind it. And then we're going to watch the colder air come in behind it. I don't think we're looking at what we would call a flash freeze situation because I think it's going to be a slow drop to freezing. But if it falls faster, there's going to be more black ice.
Absolutely.
But I do think there will be black ice out there at some point. And that's why, the schools have already canceled in many areas in northwest Alabama. And that's because they may not have power. And they're getting ahead of that. And if they don't, they're looking at patchy black ice. And then a flurry or two as we go into the evening hours. So we're going to finish out with your 10-day forecast. Again, don't focus so much on the high for Saturday, Sunday, because it's going to be all over the place, really.
Right.
So the other thing is we got 14 Monday, 11 Tuesday,
Goodness.
and then another blast of cold air.
Yeah.
And then social media is already talking about another winter storm somewhere in the south.
Tough stuff.
It's like, I've had my share of this one for the last 6 days. We're going to let this one kind of stir for a while.
And see where we land with it.
I think the perfect example of this and what people have been through, going through, there's so many social media posts that say, oh, it's all going to be rain. There's nothing to worry about. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, what if it's not? So there's a lot of misinformation out there. I think we've been pretty consistent and steady on the approach that we've done, even though we've had some hecklers out there. It's just part of the business. That's the way social media is going to be. So, again, we'll pick up that storm system as it develops and moves in. But this is very similar, I think, to what the folks in Florida on the Gulf Coast people deal with when they're tracking a hurricane.
Yeah.
Because it's 6 days of updates.
Yeah.
And some days, like 2 days ago, I was like, well, this is just a break from model data because we're not going to really know too much because it's not that transition day.
Yeah.
So this is probably exactly what it feels like to track a hurricane. And normally we wouldn't give like 6 days notice to something like this, but social media puts us in that situation where we have to bring it to the forefront because it's already being brought up by people who aren't actual meteorologists.
Very tough
anyway.
discussions, for sure.
Well, hey, we appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. Going to do that 10 o'clock news coming up here in just a few minutes. Some of the other new model guidance may be coming out, but I'll share that later on social media because nights like this, meteorologists don't go to bed until they've seen the latest 0Z model run. And if you're a meteorologist, you know what I'm talking about. You guys, thank you. We'll be here all weekend keeping you up to date.
Y'all got it.
Oh.